We now move on to our next session, which is Account Aggregator, Revolutionizing Data Ownership for Financial Inclusion. Data combined with a little bit of self-indulgence. We're all clicking our selfies nowadays. So without further ado, may I request the next panel to please join us on stage. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this session is in partnership with Axion, which explores approaches to optimize build and use of the ecosystem to ensure that AAs help in financial inclusion. So may I first invite on stage the esteemed panel led by the moderator, Ms. Megha Jain, Senior Advisor, Private Sector, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and Mr. Joydeep Gupta, Head APAC, Synaptic, Mr. Siddharth Mahanot, Co-Founder Indify, Mr. Abhishek Varshney, Senior Lead Partnerships, Digi Shehmati Foundation, Ms. Nikita Gugari, Co-Founder Zeno Co-Lab, and also Ms. Srinidhi Srinivasan, Partner, Ikigai Legal. But first, may I invite on stage Mr. Devadut Banerjee from Axion. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Hi, thank you, and very warm welcome. We are at the second day of this conference, and probably we were at very invigorating and thought-provoking discussions on financial inclusion at large. A couple of very strong recurrent themes that have come up is one is use of data and access to data and drawing insights from data. And our next session is largely about that. Before we get into the panel, I'll just talk a little bit about a project that we are doing on trying to understand how account aggregator can actually help in financial inclusion. So to start with, just basics about account aggregator. What is account aggregator? Account aggregator is a platform which enables the customer's data to come from where it is residing to institutions which will use that data to provide a financial product. So for example, all of us have bank accounts, most of us have savings, investments, insurance, business owners have GST data. Now all of this data resides with the respective institutions which generate this data. What account aggregator does is get this data from that institution and passes it on to a financial institution which can use the data to effectively design a product and deliver a product to you. Now, typically there are three aspects of account aggregator. One, any data is shared based on explicit consent. Two, the data is shared through open APIs. So any institution can potentially plug into a set of established protocols and get the data. And the third is it is end-to-end encrypted and safe. So the account aggregator itself does not have any access to the data or doesn't store the data as such. It just passes on the data to the institution. Why is account aggregator important from the customer's perspective? Because of various reasons. It's generally inconvenient for a customer to probably go to a branch, take out a statement, and with UPI becoming more and more popular, you typically see that banks are also reluctant to provide statement multiple times. Then there is a chance of fraud if the statement gets originated from the customer's end itself, so you don't really know whether it's genuine or not. So banks would typically spend some money on doing a fraud check, and there are fraud losses which come out of it. In a lot of cases with the customer segments that we are talking about, they don't have access to net banking IDs. So therefore, it's very difficult for them to access it online. Customers are often not tech savvy. So even if they have IDs, giving that to the institution when it's needed becomes a challenge. And then, typically the cost of taking out a bank statement, traveling to a branch, increases the overall cost of availing us financial products. And here is where account aggregator largely comes in. Some of the data sources which are there in the account aggregator currently, they include banks, they include mutual funds, insurance companies, all regulated entities, pension funds, GST, income tax, and depository. Some of them are active and some of them are very widely used. Largely pension funds, largely banks and mutual funds are very widely used in account aggregator. Coming to, we've spoken of the customer's perspective. Now looking at how it helps financial institutions as such. So as we said, it improves efficiency. Through the data that is there in account aggregator, we are exploring methods to derive insights from that data, which can be used to create and deliver financial products. So for example, we could look at UPI transactions in a bank and figure out if that can lead us to understand the cash flow of a small business. It improves delinquency management, and this is one very important aspect of it. So account aggregator also has a consent for monitoring, whereby you can give your access to your account to the institution, which will help them monitor the account for any probable bounces, for any early warning signals, and this can reasonably improve delinquency management. And we spoke of the cost. Again, with account aggregator giving almost a 360-degree information of customers' financial details, it could help customize products and deliver to customers at scale at a lower cost. And also there are use cases of new lending products such as cash flow based lending, which is possible by using the data from account aggregator. Now, quickly about the project. This is a project which Axion, with support from Gates Foundation, has undertaken along with Sehmati, which is the collective for account aggregator ecosystem. Through this project, what we are trying to do is we had done extensive qualitative research with about more than around 100 customers across India to figure out what are the barriers to use account aggregator for them and what could be the possible end users which will help them reach their financial goal. And with this, we have come up with some hypotheses. In the next phase, we are actually running few pilots where we are implementing scorecards based on account aggregator, where we're implementing user flows which have all these information embedded to ensure that more and more people pick up account aggregator and banks and financial institutions have more use of account aggregator. At the end of it, we plan to come up with demonstration cases for the industry as at large and establish that account aggregator is something which is financially viable, useful for the financial institution, and it also increases financial inclusion. So we spoke of these three phases. As I said, what we want to do is establish some of the design principles on usage of account aggregators, especially for customers who are not very savvy and find it difficult to transact on digital channels. We would also look at developing scorecards, developing data models, which takes in information from account aggregator and creates insights out of it. And then establish the use of data from account aggregator for customer management, which would include early warning signals, delinquency management, even propensity and creating new products around financial products. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Megha to start the panel discussion.
Hi everyone, thank you Devdut, very very good presentation. In very simple and non-complex terms, you explained about account aggregator again, thank you for that. Hi everyone, my name is Megha and I lead the private sector engagement at the India office of the Gates Foundation. As you would all know, the foundation has been working in India now for over 2 decades. We work across 5 programmatic areas, including healthcare, financial services, sanitation, gender equality, and agricultural development, with an aim to improve the lives of marginalized communities in India. Building inclusive financial systems is one of our biggest priority areas, and part of the work we try to bring together all the different industry stakeholders, including the private sector, central and the state government, the civil service organizations, as well as the communities, in order to create business cases for the private sector to serve our target populations. We have been incredibly proud of the work that we are doing along with Sehmati and Axion on the account aggregator ecosystem, and you just got a snapshot of that from the booth as well. So thank you again for being here. I think we have very good participation for a post-lunch session. And without any further ado, I would like to call upon stage our esteemed panelists. So first panelist for the session today, we have Abhishek Vashne. Abhishek leads partnerships at Sehmati, where he oversees strategic projects and advocacy initiatives. He's an accomplished lending expert with rich experience spanning over a decade. He has been at the forefront of driving digital transformation within financial institutions, having held leadership positions at organizations like PNB Housing, Clicks Capital, and India Shelter. Welcome to the panel, Abhishek. Our second panelist for the session is Joydeep Gupta. Joydeep is the business leader for APAC at Scientific AI and has over 20 years of experience in management consulting and P&L leadership roles, spanning across the US, Singapore, and India. Joy's experience extends to working in diverse sectors such as fintech analytics, CPG, edtech, e-commerce, and the tech industry. Would love to have you join the panel, Joydeep. Thank you so much for joining. Our next panelist is Siddharth Mahanot. Siddharth is a co-founder of Indify Technologies Private Limited, a platform enabling access to debt financing for businesses. With over 15 years of work experience across multiple geographies, he has held a broad range of leadership positions across renowned financial services organizations in credit underwriting and risk management functions. Great to have you on the panel, Siddharth. Our next panelist is Nikita Gugari. Nikita is a co-founder of Zeno Collab. A trained product designer, Nikita is keenly interested in user-centric, application-oriented design thinking and business innovation. At Zeno, she has led projects for global tech companies, social media platforms, and social enterprises to help them design solutions for the specific needs of the Indian consumers, specifically with the goals of making digital solutions inclusive, innovative, and safe. Welcome to the panel, Nikita. Our last panelist for today is Ms. Srinidhi Srinivasan. Srinidhi is a partner at Ikigai Law and heads the firm's data practice. She advises the world's leading technology companies, startups, Indian and global industry bodies, and clients across fintech, education, gaming, health tech, e-commerce sectors in navigating Indian and global data protection laws. Welcome to the panel, Srinidhi. Thank you so much. I would just move over there and start the panel discussion. Thank you again, everyone. And given it's a post-lunch session, we thought that we'll start with an energizer question. So I have a common question for all our panelists here. And the question is that if you were if one myth, you could wish that one myth about financial inclusion were to disappear forever, what would that be and why? Anybody wants to start?
Sure. I think in the context of lending, there's a lot of misconception that financial inclusion basically means going down the subprime category of customers. So I think that's a big myth. Inclusion does not mean going to a worse quality customer. Inclusion means going to underserved customers or customers who've never been exposed to those products before.
Good answer. Thank you. Joydeep, can we go to you next?
Yeah, see, I come from Synaptic. We're an AI company. And so I think I have the right to say this. A big myth is that AI can take care of your analytical shortcomings all the time. We have a lot of clients who come to us and say, we tried different scorecards and models, different data sets. Nothing good came out of it. So can we do some AI on it? And I have to then sit with them and give them a session on what AI really is, what it can, and most importantly, what it can't do. But I still think there's a large number of institutions in India where the analytics and the risk people think about AI as a bragging right and say, "Ki humne to AI chala diya, now it will take care of things. Things will take care of itself."
Thank you, Joydeep. Abhishek, I'm moving to you next.
So many a times we see that the responsibility of financial inclusion is being kept on government thought process that these are the one who will drive it. I think it's more of the whole industry as a whole. We all need to think over and work towards. And as Sahamati, and I think we have been working with Megha and Axion. We are working on enabling some of the segments, especially targeted towards financial inclusion. So it's more of public-private partnerships which can actually work together and encourage financial inclusion.
Thank you. Sridhiti, over to you.
Hi, I'm a data lawyer, so I'll speak as one. I think there's still this notion that privacy is a myth, or rather that there's a binary between privacy on the one hand and access or user convenience on the other. And I think that it is possible, or I hope that it is possible to develop products that are privacy conscious, but at the same time enable users to access financial services in a responsible way.
Thank you.
I think it could be a little unpopular opinion sitting on like a panel discussion around account aggregator, but I feel just digitization to increase access to financial products could solve for inclusion. Could be a myth that I would like to disappear completely, because I feel it's not about only digital products, but it's more about the complete end-to-end experiences and service that needs to be inclusive, and product becomes one of the touch point in that entire ecosystem. So
No, absolutely, Nikita. It's a good point, but digitization also plays a big role. Whether we are
course, yeah, of
talking
course.
about reducing the cost of distribution or the cost of underwriting, and unless we reduce that cost, it would never be able to, build a business case around serving the population that we are trying to serve.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you
I
so
meant
much.
like only digitization.
I agree with you. I agree. Now, thank you so much, panelists. And I would like to now jump right into questions. Abhishek, I'm coming to you first. So we heard from Devdut about account aggregator ecosystem, but you're at the center of this whole change which is happening. So how it is that AA is enabling access to financial products today, and can you tell us something new that the team or the broader ecosystem is working on today?
Uh, so coming to the three top benefits which I see is account aggregators is providing convenience to the customer. We have seen the days, I personally in my life have seen how much time it used to take in terms of getting document from the customer. And once you have the documentation, there is a whole letter, a big team which used to process that put it into a cam, give it to the credit appraiser, and then they do need to do the decisioning. The whole time has reduced, and it has all become digital because via AI you get machine readable data. So there is direct and indirect impact. Direct impact is your time get reduced immediately, and the cost of processing the file. We have seen some of the lenders telling us that the cost of processing file has reduced to around 75%, and the indirect cost which leads to your productivity in terms of sales productivity, and while this data is coming directly from the source, there is no need of FCU checks, fraud checks, where the companies used to spend a lot of money in terms of ensuring that the document which was submitted is genuine. And so on that, the convenience is something. We have also tried putting the control of data to the customer's hand. Now the customer has the full control of what data they want to share, how much they want to share, and for what purpose. So the how account aggregator is designed, it's a consent manager, and it ensures that the customer has the agency of sharing his own data, and he can share it as per the will. And obviously, because the data has become so conveniently available even to the customer and to the users of the data, which are the regulated entity, it leads to a lot of more options for the customer. So we are moving towards the era where we are looking towards more tailored made product for the customers. We are seeing more personalization which is coming. So There are two people you underwrite. These two people might have same income, but they may be they would have other assets which is very visible via account aggregators. These two persons should be given different products, different rate of interest. Their risk profiling should be different. So this is how the industry is moving. Especially, I'm seeing a lot of changes towards coming from an advisory point of view. So I remember I am very bad at managing my finances. Now with account aggregator, I have one app which I use for, which is a registered investment advisors, and I can see all my 360-degree view of my finances, and I can tell that there were many mutual fund which I could discover, which I didn't thought कि मेरे भी exist करते थे, and thanks to the power of AI. My father is a retired government officer, and I have given him a Fold app wherein he keeps on checking what are the balances because he has multiple accounts at different PSUs while he has been transferred at different location. So these are the new power which AI is enabling. And with many tech things like AI, etc., you can actually build more intelligence, and the penetration of these services can go to the last mile. And this is somewhere we are working with BMGF and with our other projects, specifically focusing on financial inclusion.
Thank you, Abhishek. So starting from putting the customer in control of their data to driving the efficiencies and effectiveness to more personalization, I think it's all coming together with account aggregator ecosystem. Very interesting. Joydeep, coming to you next, how can data offered by account aggregators be leveraged by the financial information users? And what is the quality and usability of data sets offered here? And we got a peek from Devdut on, the different data sets that are there, which we can access on account aggregator ecosystem.
Yeah. No, I think I'm very bullish about AA, and as a company, Synaptic, we use the AA data and do add-on analysis on top of that and try to make sense of that for certain use cases for our clients, right? And our clients for AA range all the way from very digital app-driven small lenders to large MFIs, small finance banks, and everybody in between. So, clearly on one side, you can see that the potential is immense. Right, Abhishek has talked about it. We saw the projects. I think the use is, in multiple folds, not just for lending or underwriting, but in portfolio monitoring and personal financial management, etc. But on the other hand, I get to see a lot of the current friction in the AA data, right? It's still an evolving kind of source of data. There are some banks, if you think about India, SBI probably has a third or a quarter of the overall bank accounts. If you talk about where this audience is primarily focused on, which is the rural India, it's probably close to 50%, right? There were projects where we found that we were only able to get the last 6 months data from SBI. Right? And so if you want to give an individual loan, which is a longer tenure, larger ticket loan, and the NBFC wants to see longer period of history, that wasn't possible. It may have been solved now, but I think the thing is to increase adoption and make the data more usable. One thing we need to do is understand what is the type of data, what is the longevity of the data that is required for certain use cases, and make sure that is available. Otherwise, the use case will be rendered redundant, right? But I think in general, a lot of positive strides have been made. If I had to kind of sum it up into maybe what are a couple of things that we could all holistically do to really accelerate the adoption of AA, I'd say one is on the lender side, FI, financial institution user, right? FIU side. I have noticed that, your agents on the ground, the branch managers, a lot of times they themselves are not very, very confident and knowledgeable about the potential of AA. So there's a lot of training that probably has to be done on the ground to really harness the good power of AA. And I'd say the other thing is more on making the rails better, taking out some of the kinks in the rail. And for an FIP, which is the financial institution provider, right? And particularly if you think about the rural RRBs, there has to be an incentive for them to make all the data available, right? Because if you look at the economics of this whole thing, it's beyond what they make per transaction. They have to, at a higher level, we need to drive some incentives that says, we'll help you make these capital investments, because unless you take this over a certain tipping point, it's still going to be crawling. So I think those are a couple of the big things that have come to my mind.
No, very interesting point, Joydeep. And Abhishek, I meant to ask you this question as well, and we can take it offline as well. How do you incentivize FIPs, right? And unless there is a win-win which is created for everybody in the ecosystem, the growth would not be organic in nature. So
yeah, this is something which has came to us as a feedback, and we have worked upon economic model which is under discussion. So we have a working group and committee which is looking after it. So once it is vetted by other, have a consensus of various banks, this will be rolled out after even discussing with the regulators.
got it. Thank you so much. Siddharth, coming to you, how do you see institutions benefiting from account aggregator? And how can you increase adoption of account aggregators by FIs?
Yeah, so I think the benefits are very well laid out, and I think Abhishek mentioned some of them, Devdut mentioned some of them. So starting from the point of a customer having to go to a bank to get his bank statement or downloading it from the internet, and we've seen all sorts of things. For example, I still remember 2 years back when a customer used to go to a SBI website and download his bank statement. If even for 1 month the statement had more than 100 transactions, it would not be downloaded in one part, it would have to be done in 2 parts. So it is extremely inconvenient for people to download month by month statement, and if somebody has multiple accounts, then do it over and over again. So one, it is very, very easy for customers. Second, there was always somebody going to and fro to pick up those statements from customers. So you are now saving on that leg. Then there was instances of frauds that were happening. Now the data is coming to you directly from the source. Similarly, for what period do you take the data? For the ease of convenience, people were sticking to taking 3 months and 6 months, whereas, for example, when you rent to MSME, we all know they are cyclical businesses. There's no way you can underwrite them well if you don't look at them for a full 1 year period. So the time period for which you can get data can be elongated, because now it's just basis and authentication that is happening. And the most important part, which is the least talked about, is the post-loan monitoring, because account aggregator gives you information through the life cycle, not only at a point of time. Today, what we're seeing in the industry, there's significant over-leveraging which is happening. There's concerns which are around end-use monitoring of loans. Now, if one has the access to account data post the loan disbursement, then it solves for both those issues. So it's a very, very powerful tool across the full lifecycle management of the loan.
No, absolutely. Excellent point, Siddharth. And is there a way that a financial institution can help increase the adoption of AA in its customer segment?
Yeah, see, as a financial institution, you can be rest assured every institution is pushing the use of AA because it is beneficial to the institution. However, I think as the entire ecosystem will have to do something around the customer education part. Today, when I am a loan service provider, I'm going to a customer and say, you give me this access. He has a reason to doubt that, okay, is this something which is a regulated process or not? Now, we've all seen what has happened in the mutual fund industry. Everybody has been bombarded with that message, mutual fund sahi hai, over the last few years, and now people understand that it is a regulated process. So some sort of that campaign will have to be done across the ecosystem. One, giving that message strongly that this is a regulatory based mechanism which is not a fraud, because to be fair to the consumer at the other end, he hears on the radio every day RBI messages saying don't give your OTP, don't do this. There are all sorts of frauds which are coming in the news on a daily basis. So most people don't know that this is something which is a regulated process. So a customer education initiative by the entire ecosystem will have to be done to make this important. The institutions will obviously push because the benefit is very, very clear for the institutions as such.
No, thank you so much, Siddharth, and I hope, Abhishek, you are taking a note of it. Yeah. I think, again, we'll all have to come together in order to drive such a...
So to add on one more point, any digital transformation project takes a lot of effort. especially when it is branch led. Getting the consensus of, or maybe changing the way how the sales team operate currently is a big task. What we have seen during our interaction with some of the lenders where this has worked out well is uh, that they have either incentivized or make it mandatory. Like you have to ping it twice on account aggregate, then only you will be made the option of uploading the bank statement or via net banking. So this is how the adoption has come, and the companies who have done this kind of work, they have seen a huge adoption coming into place. And during my visits to these companies, we have seen that once they have they are usual to these getting data via account aggregate, they find it much easier and better way of getting it, and they become prominent. They promote this themselves in their own network, and via word of mouth, it becomes popular. So I just wanted to highlight that point. Digital transformation are difficult to bring in, especially in a very large set of bank branch-led models. But once done properly, it has a huge impact.
Thank you, Abhishek. Nikita, coming to you next. Considering different levels of digital maturity and comfort with new technology, how can access to account aggregator be made more inclusive?
Yeah, I think through the kind of work we have done or the kind of consumer research we have done across different industries, may it be fintech or health tech or any kind of digital services, we do observe a lot of like a great diversity of digital awareness, access, and also comprehension of those products. Just because somebody has access to digital services doesn't always equate to that they understand what it's actually doing or what is happening at the back end. So we do observe a very great spectrum of digital awareness in our country. Even if we are talking about underserved population or certain segment, within that itself we end up seeing a very great spectrum of digital awareness. And also when we couple that with the financial awareness and the spectrum that which it lies in, when we talk about financial awareness, it could be financial literacy, financial capabilities, because it, again, that doesn't equate to one another same. So when we talk about account aggregator, since it's very new, we are still developing possibilities of interventions with it. It becomes very important to look at these both of these spectrums together instead of just looking at digital awareness or just looking at financial literacy or financial capabilities. But when we look at both of these things together, that becomes a composite understanding of the consumer. So since me and my company, we come from more consumer research and consumer behaviors perspective, we can talk more from where do we see consumers lie today more than just the tech companies or the financial institution side. So when we are building products for this population with such a varied spectrum of understanding and access, it becomes very important. We have figured out that there are a lot of trust markers that we need to hit on and we need to work with to increase the adoption and designing such products with. So there are a lot of these trust markers that we have seen which are beyond just the digitization or beyond just the digital product and how are we creating the design and usability of the product, but also it goes beyond those product and digitization, but it also includes, say, for example, through the research we have heard like assisted model works really well for a lot of population. And we understand that assisted model for a lot of institutions is an expensive affair to do. But then when we are designing and in thinking of the increasing adoption, we need to think of, I think, through the research as well, we have seen that thinking of the product as a long-term roadmap, that today we are starting with assisted model, but how can we take the user to self-serve eventually? So that even though it feels like a expense today, but then over a period, how are we increasing the adoption? Also, few interactions, like now in the past 4 or 5 years, we have seen digitization increasing. People are using UPI. Every other person has a smartphone. So there are a lot of interactions that people have gotten familiar with, which has made them trust those products and build confidence in using those products. So sometimes we don't need to reinvent the wheel all the time. Maybe just figuring out how can we work with the familiar interactions. When I say interactions, it could be the digital interactions. Like familiarity builds trust for people. So how can we do that? But again, when we look at it in the lens of digital diversity that we see in our country, sometimes just because somebody can, say for example, scan a QR code and make the payment doesn't mean that they exactly understand what's going on behind the product. So just because somebody can perform an action digitally doesn't mean they understand. That's why I think the digital awareness and how are we communicating those products and services to people becomes very important. Like I'll just quickly give you an example and maybe I can end the answer. But through the research, we had seen that for account aggregator journey, there is a lot of consent we need to ask for, and there are some regulations for which we need to say input OTPs, for example, multiple times. And there is a very strong reasoning why it is that way. But when we talk about it from the consumer side, and when we heard stories and how they are reacting to it, we understood that people can input OTPs because they have done it 1,000 times for other products. But in the product that they are using for account aggregator journey, they are not understanding why am I putting so many times OTP? Why are they asking me so many times? Just because they know how to do it doesn't mean they know what is going on. So I think that's where the explaining what is happening behind the product and behind their actions and why something is happening, I think is more important. I think when that gets completed, then I think the comprehension and understanding builds, which ends up building the trust, which I think helps in increasing the adoption of any digital product, I feel.
Excellent points, Nikita. Thank you so much. And before coming to you, Srinidhi, I'm very tempted to again go back to Abhishek to ask about his experience with the assisted journey on Account Aggregator.
So right now we are seeing more adoption coming into the digital journeys, but yes, there are assisted, wherein majorly the journeys are sent on, the link is sent on the SMS to the customer device, and then the journey starts. We have done some journeys with Axion and in our project itself, where we have tried introducing a voice based journey flows, which we need to fix it, and we see that it is rolled out with proper guardrails. So as more work needs to be done in terms of assisted journeys, which is underway.
Thank you so much. Srinidhi, we are coming to a very important point now. I think data protection is there on the top of everybody's mind. So the ecosystem really has evolved keeping data protection principles in mind, right? How do you think the ecosystem players, including FIUs, FIPs, and the regulator should do to ensure that concerns on privacy would be addressed?
Sure. I think it's very important to kind of ensure privacy while at the same time not completely sacrificing legitimate business use cases, consumer convenience. Like I think the example Nikita gave, that you're giving multiple OTPs or there are multiple stages or screens, that does also act as a deterrent for the user. It's so that's not the objective either when we speak of privacy. I think for that reason, most data protection laws in the world, including India's new law, which was enacted last year, and a lot of products that we see now emerge in the market, are thinking through how to bake in those privacy principles within developing a privacy conscious UI. The idea is to see how best that principle that the law sets can be reflected in UI design. So if the law says consent has to be specific, informed, unambiguous, what does that actually translate to on the product? I don't think that necessarily means 100 checkboxes for different purposes, because that can add excessive friction in the customer journey. The customer is likely to simply drop off, not want to move ahead, and it doesn't serve a legitimate business use, nor does it serve a legitimate use. It's kind of where putting all of the onus on the user then to make those choices. So I think that's some sort of a trade-off, some balance, that when you're developing a product, and I think Semati has been doing a lot of work on what kind of consent templates to even display to the users. Is there a way to templatize the purposes that are displayed to the user? Also, again, on the piece of, let's say if it's for one transaction that one is pulling data and the FIU is seeking access to that data, but there may be some incidental purposes within that, maybe identifying points of drop-off to be able to provide a better product. This for the AA app itself. Maybe there may be several other umbrella uses that are necessary for providing that critical function, maybe fraud prevention, network security. So for each of these is the idea that like each of these have to have separate consents. I don't think that's the way that we'll be headed with data protection laws. So I think the regulator, both, RBI, once a privacy regulator is set up, not a regulator, but it'll be an enforcement body, there could be more guidance, which is industry-led as well, through agencies, in different sectors that can help identify what are those design choices that can help. I think Siddharth had made the point about consumer education and awareness. I think that's kind of central even to a privacy conversation, that users are made aware of what happens once they click on something, or once they go ahead, or once they provide their OTP. What is the choice that they're actually making? That it may not be very clear from just a description on the UI or from privacy notices or policies that actually nobody ends up reading. So those are just a few thoughts on how we see this evolving in the next few years.
Thank you so much, Srinidhi. The project that we're doing alongside Semati and Axion, we are also very intentional about gender. So is there a way that we can embed this gender intentionality with the different archetypes of customers that we're working with, and the different use cases that we're working with? So I would like to ask panel a few questions regarding that, about a gender intentional approach on account aggregator ecosystem. Abhishek, coming to you first. In your experience, what kind of different challenges, if any, do women have to navigate while accessing and using account aggregator?
I would say account aggregator is agnostic to women and men. But overall, when we talk about any financial decision being taken by any family, majorly it is male dominant. And the products and the UI UX even are built around how we are interacting with the financial services. What AI is enabling is that because the data is accessible, there's a lot many innovation can happen, and more of, like we talked about, personalization and tailor-made products. A lot many products can come and build in, and many companies can come up with such products. Like I know there's a app, there's a company called Salt. They have some PFM for women. So we'll see more of such companies coming in and innovation kicking in, and many of them will build product around women. And this is what account aggregator is altogether unlocking. Obviously, it will start with awareness, and with access to all of your financial data, you can graduate them towards more decisions like lend on loans, etc.
No, thank you so much, Abhishek. Joydeep, coming to you, we talk a lot about this algorithmic biases today, right? So how can we be intentional about making sure that the algorithms leveraging account aggregator data pools are inclusive and do not reflect these gender biases, for instance?
Sure. Yeah, so there's some very standard practices to remove any kind of biases, whether it's on gender or age or race or creed. I'll tell you a couple of the things that we do as Synaptic. We work with some of the largest banks in the US, where this is regulatorily wise, it's a criminal offense. So first thing, of course, we need to understand the context of the data. So as Abhishek was mentioning, if largely bank accounts are in the name of the male person, right? And we are trying to evaluate the female member of the household, then obviously there is a mismatch there, right? So at a data layer, if there are some things can be done, for example, in the credit bureau side, in MFI bureau side, there is now a household report as opposed to an individual report, right? So the household is a cumulative bureau footprint of everybody. So if we could eventually get to a household account aggregator level. So again, that was just one example, but at a data level, if you could do create some constructs, that's level one. Now coming to your question on modeling, obviously specifically that particular variable in the model, right, the gender in this case, right, we would obviously take it out of the model, right? But that's not good enough, because kind of inadvertently, there might be other proxy variables which individually or collectively could impute the gender, right? So for that, what we do in every exercise is, and there's different kinds of P stats, Z stats, etc. that we do. But without getting into the technicalities, what we do is we create different versions of the model on different data sets, and then we actually run it against male and the female. And if we see a pattern where for certain segments or certain slices of the population, we would see that the female scores are always consistently lower than the male scores, everything else being constant. That helps us identify the variables which either independently or collectively are providing a shadow of bias. So we do those exercises as best practice protocols in every modeling exercise, and the industry does that as well. And that's really the right way to take out the gender bias and replace it with unbiased variables.
Thank you so much, Joydeep. Siddharth, coming to you on the FI perspective on this, how do you think about how to leverage these data-rich sources without, exacerbating the gender biases that exist?
Yeah, so the point is that biases exist more in the human than the models, right? So you could make models without biases. The fact that you can automate more and more of the processes means you are reducing the dependence on the human, who's in a way creeping in bias in some part of the process, right? Today, when a person is going and collecting a bank statement, right? If we see the female applicant and maybe he says, okay, no, maybe she's not worthy of her own and does not process that application. The more you automate, the higher the chances that you are eliminating the bias at various stages in the process. And the models definitely need to be free of any bias. As Joydeep mentioned, that's what every institution does.
No, excellent point. I think one thing that technology does is bring more inclusion, right? Nikita, coming to you, what are some of the ways in which user experience and design be made even more gender intentional and inclusive?
I think it is very important, I think, to start with like the curiosity to understand how are the worlds of these two genders very different. So may it be the digital world that both of them come from, the financial world, the social biases and social norms world that they come from. So when we think of a product, again, I would say that when we are designing a digital product for any gender, I think a lot of times to increase the access for those products, I think, or making it more gender neutral, I think it becomes important to go beyond just the product, but trying to design the product and the entire ecosystem in a way that is mainly designing for, say, awareness, autonomy, or even safety and privacy of people. So when we talk about designing for awareness, figuring out how can we increase the education or educate both the genders in a way that the gap between digital literacy and financial literacy is reducing. Or when we think of designing for the autonomy, which is, we understand that it's very different for both the genders, it becomes important to think of how can the products and the services that we are designing ends up empowering or supporting the woman or the man to become more financially independent, may it be through, say, the advisory services, because through our research and the field visits to different people, we have also met a lot of women who have been very ambitious, who have complete autonomy of doing things, but what they lack is the advisory and the support to figure out how they can grow, how they can become bigger than what they have, or how they can achieve their dreams. So advisory along with the product to increase the autonomy becomes important. And also when we talk about digital products, especially the safety and privacy, we understand that the women are more prone to like share devices with their family members, or even we have also seen that women sometimes is they're more vulnerable towards online threats because of maybe some blackmailing, or we have also read in our research that some women might be more constrained in giving out their photo or writing their name and address. So how can products be designed keeping these things in mind, instead of making it one size fit all kind of a solution in a way?
No, that's a great point, Nikita. And women do use shared devices mostly, right? And it's not, I'm just coming from another session in the morning where we were discussing it's not just about the cost of the device or the data, but it's also the control that the family wants to exert on women using the smartphone, right?
Correct.
It gives me a very good segue into my next question to you, Srinidhi, which is women often use these shared devices, right? Leading to a lack of privacy and autonomy. So, how can concerns around this be abated?
Sure. I wonder though how acute of an issue, or what are the specifics of this issue in the context of the account aggregator framework. But definitely echo the sentiment that shared devices does lead to a loss of privacy in some sense, loss of autonomy. There is a lot of research globally around suggestions both on the tech front, on the regulatory front, but often that's in the context of, let's say, search engine usage or social media, what a woman is accessing on the internet, whether that's whether she has autonomy over her ability to be able to view that. And a lot of suggestions in those contexts from the tech side are app locks or session based logins rather than an app allowing you to stay logged in on a shared device. No download onto the device so that it's all on cloud and there's nothing really on the device that one can see once the person logs out of an app. But yeah, I wonder how acute or how relevant some of these are in the account aggregator setting, because I did hear, I think one of the panelists had also mentioned that it's more likely for the male member of the family to be the applicant here, which might have certain other issues around access to data. Is there a way of having each individual member's data also pooled in some manner? But I think that's one theme that one could think of, besides of course the sensitization and awareness piece, particularly for women as well, on really understanding what this is doing, what the account aggregator framework is doing, what the purpose of the product is, not fearing it and being able to use it, but at the same time knowing what are the choices that are coming to them on the platform. Just as one other thought from a data protection lens, the new data protection law has this requirement that privacy notices, one must allow users to be able to access them in local languages as well. I think that was an attempt to reach out to more underserved communities, other regions. I think that's also a powerful way of inclusion and move towards that.
Thank you, Srinidhi. We are towards the end of the panel, and I would like to get thoughts from all our panelists on one question, which is if you were to add one additionality onto account aggregator ecosystem in order to exponentially grow the financial inclusion, what would it be?
It's my view. So generally, one of the feedback which we get from many lenders is that just basis the mobile number, if they can get to know how many assets are there, so it gives them a sense of what is the whole universe from a customer angle, and also is kind of signals to them which data they are sharing, which account they are sharing, which account they are not sharing. So this is something on lending. I think it can exponentially add value to. Plus, I think some other representations in terms of getting EPFO data and CBDT income tax data. Because once income tax data is there and GST coverage is fully covered, I think we can build fully digital journeys now.
Thank you. Joydeep, can I come to you next?
Yeah. Actually, I think I'll answer the question a little bit differently. Instead of just one more data point, if you have to ask me about one more data point, I'd probably say there's a lot of spend data that we are looking at from AA, but the income data, if we can get it in a consistent, like the salary, right? You could map companies and get create a salary database. But I'd say more important than that, just to extend Abhishek's point, is not, I think account AA is going and getting us different points of data. But if we could get an overall summary or a mapping so that I just ping AA once using whatever, phone number, Aadhaar number, whatever, and then I get a big digital footprint of the income and expenses in a very coherent way. Otherwise, I'll have to ping multiple times, and then the two data sets won't talk to each other, and I'll wonder which one is correct, what did I miss? But from the source, if I could get an entire footprint of the person, I think that will help people like us do the analytics much better.
Thank you. Siddharth, your views.
Yeah, I think two things. One is on the GST side, while there's work happening there, I think that data is still far from being in a usable format, so that GST data needs to get better. Second is the data around savings account is very good, but on the current account side, when people are running businesses, that data again needs to get in a better shape than what it is today. And sometimes it's just a function of who's the authorized signatory, etc., and how are those accounts getting processed. But there's work to be done on the current account side.
Thank you so much. Nikita, over to you next.
I think I can talk more from the consumer side. I think if the ecosystem can support in creating that awareness to lead to the autonomy in decision making, I think that is something that can support a lot in adoption as well as the understanding of the ecosystem than the data point. That's it.
Thank you. Srinidhi, your final thoughts.
Yeah. I'm not sure from an account aggregator lens, but I'd actually love to see how the similar consent artifact is actually going to get replicated in other sectors as well, because that's, again, the theme from, it kind of gives you that proof of concept. Again, the idea with like a huge consent manager is that I'm able to see my consents across different platforms, financial, health, multiple different ones. So, and this sort of course, sets the like a POC in one sector. So I'd be curious to see if how that can be scaled across other sectors as well.
Thank you so much, panelists and everyone, for staying with us. Incredible panel and very, very good insights. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion. We are thankful to the esteemed panelists, the esteemed moderator, and of course, Axion.